Modi's One India, One Poll push. President Mukherjee has echoed the same sentiment.
That's right. Yesterday, of course, in his address to the entire nation on the eve of Republic Day, President Mukherjee admitted that it could be possible if the political parties seriously arrived at a consensus on One India, One Poll.
But here's what he's added. It can remove a lot of inconveniences in terms of management, fund management, expenditure. Also argued here that the Election Commission should take the initiative.
The BJP-led NDA government at the centre had already set the ball rolling on the One Nation, One Election theory slogan as Prime Minister Modi was slated to call an all-party meeting in the run-up to the upcoming budget session of the Parliament.
The time is also ripe for a constructive debate on electoral reforms and a return to the practice of the early decades after independence, when elections to Lok Sabha and state assemblies were held simultaneously. It is for the Election Commission to take this exercise forward in consultation with political parties.
राष्ट्रपति जी ने कहा है कि विधानसभा और लोकसभा चुनाव दोनों एक साथ होने चाहिए।
अब वो रिटायर हो जाएंगे तब होगा।
Not so very easy because we have certain constitutional issues to address in this. For example, I handle Jammu and Kashmir. In Jammu and Kashmir, state elections are held after 6 years, not 5 years.
Yes.
So how do you bring it into One Nation, One election?
There are issues in this also. I do agree with the opposition. That's why Prime Minister wanted a nationwide debate. Let the debate start, and at the end of the day, there is consensus.
Let's go across to our colleague Meghna Dekha joining us with further details. Meghna, many leaders in the BJP and the government have been speaking of how this is a possibility of one nation, one election, which of course will cut down on the inconveniences and the fact that the country is forever in an election mode. But the fact that President Pranab Mukherjee came out in support, perhaps we can see some movement on this front.
Yes, there is movement on the front. Yes, it is a novel idea, and yes, the benefits of it are going to be massive. However, let's also take a look at the hurdles that the government must cross in order to put in place a One India, One Poll. First, of course, it needs to ramp up all the resources as well as infrastructure. All of that is going to be massive. Remember, if there are supposed to be simultaneous polls all across in Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha as well as the state assemblies in 2 phases, then massive infrastructural rehaul will be required. Also, drastic increase in the number of EVM machines, of course, will be required as well. That too, of course, is going to be very, very expensive for the Election Commission as well as for the central government to fund. In addition to that, the amendment of the Representation of People's Act will be required, and for that, Akshay, is the problem that it needs 2/3 majority on the floor of the House. So political consensus is going to be very hard to build as well regarding this subject, and of course, special provisions in the case the government falls before a term. What happens if mid-term one of the government falls? Then special provisions also need to be incorporated. So it's not as simple as it may sound, because several terms and conditions need to be added, and of course a political consensus, all of that is going to be very hard to reach.
That's right, Meghna. Talking about political consensus here, we've had Prime Minister Modi, the BJP, ruling the centre, echoing that sentiment. Now, President Mukherjee also makes that statement here. But the opposition parties, of course, have been alleging here this would only cause further confusion in the voters' mind, doesn't really work in the long run. So you have already opposition voices speaking out against it.
Well, also, let's not forget, Seher, let's say that the entire country together goes into a poll mode. There is a high possibility that one specific party may just be the big winner, both in the state poll as well as the central poll. So that is something that the opposition parties are very worried about, as to if the benefits of one big announcement or one big mega scheme, for example, by the government may just sway the states as well as the central government towards one specific party, if that is to happen. Of course, that could be the other way around as well. However, that is also one of the concerns that the political parties per se aren't coming out and speaking very openly about, but that is one of the big concerns. Of course, the fact that it's going to be much more expensive, many have said in the long run it may actually be much cheaper if together we can have simultaneous poll. And in addition to that, there are several other nuances also, Seher, which need to be looked into. The fact that if you, let's say in 2019, you want to have the first phase and you want, let's say, about 20 of these polls going, states going into polls along with the Lok Sabha elections, and several of these terms, some of them may have to be curtailed to match the Lok Sabha dates. Some of them may have to be extended. The assembly sessions may have to be extended as well.
Right. Meghna, request you to stay with us. We'll take a listen into what President Pranab Mukherjee had to say in his address to the people on the eve of Republic Day on this issue.
The time is also ripe for a constructive debate on electoral reforms and a return to the practice of the early decades after independence, when elections to Lok Sabha and state assemblies were held simultaneously. It is for the Election Commission to take this exercise forward in consultation with political parties.
Let's get in a voice here from the Congress. Mr. Tom Varakan with us. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Varakan. In your view, the Congress hasn't really spoken out in support of this.
See, the President of India has taken a view on this issue. The only problem is, theoretically, it may sound excellent, but in practice, it becomes extremely difficult, because this is not just a state of Gujarat or Madhya Pradesh. This is a country that from Jammu and Kashmir to the other end. Practical problems are huge.
Okay.
So if they are able to
are
bring
you,
about...
is the Congress here not really supporting this view only because of practical issues, or is it because one particular party could just benefit from this one major wave of victory?
See, these are not issues that we can say in black and white terms. These are issues that need discussion. These are issues that all parties need to meet, minds need to meet. There should not be hidden agenda behind all this. So once there is a meet and there's subject of dialogue between all parties and debate across the board, these issues need to be sorted out that way.
Okay.
It is not just the interest of one party that we go about doing it, because the practical problems are huge. There may be requirement for constitutional amendments. There may be issues which need to be addressed. So this is a larger issue, I think, which needs a larger debate.
Okay. If I may also ask about the problems we face currently, Mr. Tom Varakan, the fact we have state assembly elections, we have the general elections, because time and again we're looking at the country just being in, an election mode all the time. The mode on code of conduct kicks in, then we have a problem with long-term policy making, because an opposition parties believe it's only in order to lure voters into their favor, etc. So don't you think, as a whole, this could also be a problem in good governance and development of the country as a whole, if we do not have this implemented?
We have heard promises of good governance, but has it been delivered? The point is, has there been any point at which in this history of India, there have been problems? Elections are mandated and they happen in a democratic setup. It is not something that has happened after the current dispensation came in.
Sure.
There have been elections and elections that have happened in this country. There are problems, I accept it. But the point is, what's the alternative? You need to go into a system which means election across the country, so that also takes time, and there's a huge focus of expenditures involved, which is also there in the other alternative. So I think this is a subject that needs wider debate, and it's not something you can push it down the throat of this country. We need a wider debate. There must be meeting of minds on this issue of all political parties, and if some conclusions are reached through the Election Commission, it should be useful.
All right, through the Election Commission essentially there. Please turn with us, Mr. R.P. Singh of the BJP with us on the phone line. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Singh. What the Congress here continues to maintain, that this is going to be a Herculean task to be doing it all together, all at once, across the country.
But I appreciate Mr. Varakan saying that he is okay with this election. We should take initiatives in this, and the party and he as a spokesman of the party saying that they are okay with any such initiative which can bring more transparency in the election process and then can curb on the election funding and all that expenditure which goes into electioneering. And also that every now and then elections hold the overall process of development and overall policy making of the government also, any government, I mean, whether it's BJP or Congress government or in states also with different governments, it curbs your process of policy making and then development also. So I welcome Mr. Tom Varakan's suggestion that if Election Commission take initiative, obviously Election Commission should take initiative in this.
Okay.
And we are also, Prime Minister Modi has already long back said that he wants that one election should happen countrywide together.
Right.
we welcome the step.
Okay.
Either the President says this, election commission execute it and call all party meeting and take all party on board.
Sure.
It will be a great step ahead for the democracy of India.
Okay, appreciate you joining us, gentlemen. Mr. R.P. Singh as well as Mr. Tom Vodakam, thank you very much for speaking to us here on NewsX.
We're slipping into a breather. Back in just a bit with more news.